Hey and welcome everyone. Today on Skylines Summer Session, myself and Gregor are joined by Michael Levan, who is a developer advocate for Octopus Deploy. A very warm welcome, Michael. It's great to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much. Thank you guys for having me.
Anytime. So I hear today you're going to talk to us a bit about Octopus Deploy with Azure, which sounds awesome. But before we get into the fun stuff, tell us a bit about yourself and what you do at Octopus Deploy.
Yeah, for sure. So as you said, I'm a developer advocate. So essentially what I do is, a lot of people get it confused where I'm just speaking about Octopus, but that's really not the case at all. As a developer advocate, my job is to make developers' lives easier, even if you aren't using Octopus. So if you're using Azure DevOps, GitHub Actions, if you're using Terraform, Python, PowerShell, Golang, whatever, AWS, Azure, my job is to work with you and see if you need any help with anything, essentially. So a lot of what I do is I'll do a lot of content, a lot of writing right now. I do a lot of videos, a lot of this type of stuff if you want to, put this in like the public speaking portion. And then, so a lot of blogs, a lot of example code and stuff like that. Right now, something that I'm working on, it's not even in beta yet, but I'm going to show a little bit of an example, is the Terraform provider. So I'm writing a lot of the Golang code to kind of create that Terraform provider for Octopus Deploy to be able to interact with Octopus with Terraform. So pretty much my job is, developer, a little bit of marketing, a little bit of helping people, content creation, and all of that kind of just jumbled up together. So it's all stuff that I love. So it's really exciting for me.
Sounds good. Yeah, congrats on a new job, by the way.
Thank you.
So just a quick question before we kind of get moving. What do you think Octopus Deploy's real strength is?
Yeah, so this is, my opinion is going to be a little bit biased.
That's okay, that's fine. You're allowed to do that.
So, a big reason why I decided to go with Octopus, after working with Azure DevOps, Jenkins, GitHub Actions, working as an engineer with all of these tools, working as an engineer with Octopus. And the thing that I've always found, again, totally in my opinion, is that Octopus focuses 100% on deployments. So they're focusing on your infrastructure deployments, your software deployments, any type of automation that you need to do. So you have your CI aspect, and then you have your CD, or continuous deployment, continuous delivery, and they're focused on that 100%. Now, if you look at other tools, they're all CI/CD tools. So they're focusing a little bit on continuous integration. Some of them have a way to store your source control. Some of them have a way for a wiki. Others have boards in there so you can write items and stuff like that for your sprints. So I think the thing that, in my opinion, that differentiates Octopus so much is the fact that their focus isn't all over the place. It's 100% on deployments, and that's it. And I think that's what makes it a leader in the CD space right now.
Nice one.
Sounds cool. So apart from the Terraform plugin bit you just mentioned, is there anything else Octopus are working on that might be going GA soon, which is good to know about?
Yeah, so one of the really big things that we're working on this year is config as code. So kind of think of config as code. It's, I guess the best way that you could think about it is kind of like YAML pipelines, but not really, because it's not YAML, it's actually in HCL, which is obviously awesome because HCL continues to be like the top 3 on GitHub for the most popular and growing programming languages right now. And for everybody who's watching, Terraform is written in HCL. So when you write Terraform templates, it's HCL. So, I think that's like the biggest thing that's happening right now. A lot of customers have been asking about it. A lot of people have been wondering when we're going to move away from the UI and get to the code base of being able to create your deployments. Because, that was even like one of the biggest problems for me when I was just using Octopus, was like, I got this UI that's really cool, but what if I want to write code for this pipeline? What if I want to store it in source control? What if I want to be able to collaborate with others? And that was one of my big problems with it as well. So, it's really nice to see that Octopus is the company that when people say something, they're listening to the feedback. And a lot of the features that come in are, based on a lot of people asking for a specific type of product or a specific implementation into the product. So that's definitely a big one that's coming out. Definitely keep that on horizons for sure.
Awesome. That does sound good. Okay, so Michael, I believe you have a demo for us.
I do. Yeah.
Without further ado, please take it away.
Cool. So I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen here. So one of the things that I see a lot of people asking about is like how to interact with Octopus. So what I did was I'm setting up a project group, a project, setting up app registration, accounts to be able to communicate with Azure from Octopus. And I'm doing all of it in a few different languages. So I got some HCL here, I got some PowerShell, some Azure Client, and then we're going to see a little bit of UI action as well. But I wanted to be able to give you a little bit of each, from being able to make API calls to actually being inside of the UI. So the first things first is the project group. So think of your project group like a place to store your releases. So for example, like if you're familiar with Azure DevOps, you have your release and it's all in like one page. There's just a bunch of releases there. But you can actually make folders to put those releases in certain places. Let's say you're deploying 5 different companies. You can make directories for those 5 different companies. That's exactly what a project group is. It allows you to take your project or your release and put it into one place. So the first thing that we're going to see here, and this is part of the Terraform provider. Again, I want to put a big disclaimer that this isn't even in beta yet. We're still very much testing this, but it's still pretty cool to take a look at. So I have my provider here and I have my TFR. So my TFRs are pointing to my server URL and my space. Then I have
quick question. Sorry,
Sure.
what's the TFR for our listeners?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, absolutely. So your TFRs, kind of think about these like values that you're passing in at runtime. So let's say you're thinking about like Python or Golang or PowerShell or something like that. You have your parameters that you're passing in inside of your function at runtime. It's very similar to that. That's pretty much the way that I explain it to everybody. And then you set up your variables in a different file. You can also have defaults here as well. So if you say you like wanted to have this URL as the default always, you could put that in here and remove it from the TFRs. The reason why I like to do the TFRs for pretty much any piece of Terraform that I write is because I want to be able to make my code move around as much as possible. I don't want it to have any static values, so I try to use TFRs as much as possible for that. So we have our variables here. This is going to be for my API key that I'm passing in, my space, and my server URL. Think of a space like projects in Azure DevOps. So if you have one org and you have multiple projects in there, think of a space like a project. And I'm probably going to do a lot of comparisons between the two because a lot of people that are watching have probably worked with Azure DevOps, so it'll be able to connect that a little bit more. So what I'm doing in my resource here, and your resource in Terraform is essentially the thing that you're creating. So you have resource types, and those resource types are to create projects and spaces and groups and things like that. In our case, we're creating a project group here, and we're going to name it Skylines Project Group. So I'm actually in the directory right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a Terraform init. I've initialized, and think of a Terraform init kind of like when you do a git add dot, you're initializing that directory or that environment, you're staging it and getting it ready. It's essentially what a Terraform init is. And another thing that Terraform init does is it also brings down the provider for you. So for example, let's say you're working in Azure, Azure RM is the Terraform provider. So you would be bringing down that provider and essentially installing it. And it's really just an exe. If you're familiar with Go, Go just does a Go build, and then it builds that project and turns it into a package or an exe. So that's what we did here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to run Terraform plan. And this is going to ask me for an API key. The reason why I'm doing it like this is because I didn't want to hard code my API key anywhere. But this is a demo. So now my API key here for everybody that's watching. Don't try to hack me because I'm going to delete it right after this. Then I'm just going to paste it in here. I'm going to run this. And then this is going to refresh our environment. And we're going to see at this point the plan. The plan means what is going to happen. So in our case, the plan is we're going to add 1, change 0, destroy 0. And then with that, we can run Terraform apply. I'm going to type in that API key again. And then I'm going to choose yes. This is just saying, are you sure you want to do it? It's just a confirmation. I'm going to say yes, boom, it's created. So we're done with the project group. Next, we're going to actually create a project for ourselves. And to do that, we can still do that in code. We don't have to do that through the UI. So what we can do is we can create a specific project name. Here is our subscription ID. And then, oh no, I'm sorry, actually, oops, I went to the wrong one. So Here's the right one. So we have our new project, and what we're doing is we're pointing to our server URL, our project name, our project group, aka the one that we just created, and then the life cycle. So think about a life cycle like, how could I put it? Like, let's say you have dev, UAT, and prod. That could be combined in one life cycle, essentially.
Does that kind of mean it does dev, then UAT, then prod? And can I end up in that?
Yes. Yep. Exactly. Yep. So right here, what I'm doing is I'm kind of doing the same thing that I did with the API key before. I'm doing a read host. I'm going to be passing in my API key as a secure string. So when I type it in, there's going to be no plain text, and then I'm going to convert it to plain text down here. And then down here is pretty interesting. So a lot of people haven't seen this yet, but the Octopus CLI. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to Google Octopus CLI download, and this is the first thing that you can hit. You can go here and you can do it for Mac OS, you can do it for Windows, and then you can actually work directly and make API calls with the Octopus CLI. It's just like using the Azure CLI essentially. So what I'm doing is I got a little bit of PowerShell in here, and then I got the Octopus CLI as well. So this is the PowerShell aspect of it, and then here I'm using the Octopus CLI to create the project. So I'm going to be passing in the project name, the project group, again, what we just created with Terraform, the server URL, the API key, and then the lifecycle. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to highlight all this. I'm going to run selection here, and then this is going to be prompting me for my API key. So I'm going to go back here, copy this API key, go back to VS Code, right? And I'm going to paste it in. So as we can see, you can't see it in plain text, which is obviously great, and that's what you want. And this is, in my opinion, the best way to do it from an ad hoc perspective. Of course, if you're doing this like in your own pipeline, you're building all of this, or some other automation platform, you're going to have a way to pass in secrets or something like that. But because we're doing this completely ad hoc, this, in my opinion, is the best way. So we're going to do this. This is going to run. And now our project has been created. So I'm going to close out of this. And then before we create the app registration for our account, let's just head over to the UI really quick. And I'm going to go to my projects here. And as you can see, I don't have any new projects at the moment. I'm going to refresh. And then boom. So we have our new project group, and then we have our new project. So we're 50% of the way there. We got our project, we got our project group. We can now start adding different steps that we want in our process to deploy to Azure. But before that, we have to set up the authentication. So there's got to be some sort of authentication for Octopus to be able to talk to Azure. And then what we can do there is we can set up accounts. So if I go to infrastructure and I go to accounts, you're going to see I've been playing around with this a little bit. But what we can do is we can go to add account, and then we have a few different options here. So we have AWS, you can do SSH keys, usernames, passwords, tokens, and the one that we want is an Azure subscription. Now, what this is going to be asking for is your subscription ID, your tenant ID, your client ID, and a password. So how do we generate all those? And that's what we can use app registrations for in Azure. So app registrations are just a way from a user perspective and an SDK perspective to be able to authenticate from Azure to somewhere or to Azure. So I have this code here, and what this is going to do is this is going to take my subscription ID for my Azure account. I'm going to name my app registration Azure Auth, and then I'm going to be using Azure CLI here to create that RBAC rule for the role-based access control so we can authenticate.
And we're setting this at the subscription level, so it can deploy everything to the whole subscription, yeah?
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, and you can really move this around. Like if you wanted to, you could do like resource, you could point it to like a resource group or something if you wanted to, but it really depends on your use case. I typically, depending on what I'm doing, I'll usually point it to the subscription for Octopus, and I'll tell you why. Because if I point it to a specific resource group or I point it to a specific resource, that means that account can only do one thing. And that could be okay from a security perspective, but if you need your Octopus Deploy instance to be able to deploy and create and release to a bunch of different things in Azure, then you're going to end up having 50 Azure accounts, and you're going to have 50 app registrations, and then that could also in turn be poor from a security perspective. So you're kind of going to have to roll the dice there, and really depending on your organization. So yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to run this, run selection. So now what this is going to do is this is going to kick out that authentication for me. I'm sorry, did somebody have a question?
No, no.
Oh, sorry. I thought somebody said something. It's just voices in my head. Sorry about that. So I have my app ID here, my password, and my tenant. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a little copy and paste action here. So I'm going to go back here. The first thing is I'm going to type in my subscription ID. I'm going to go back. I'm going to grab my app ID, paste that in, tenant, and then finally the password. Okay, so we have our subscription ID, our tenant, our application ID, and then the password itself. There are a few different authentication methods. There is the service principal, which we just did for the app registration, or if you want to do some cert validation or authentication, you can do that as well. And with that, I'm going to click save here. And then to make sure that it actually works, we're going to do save and test, fingers crossed. There we go. Success, the account has been verified. So at this point, we now know that we have that authentication from Octopus to Azure for that entire subscription. If I go back to the code here, the one thing that I do want to show really quick. So I have this up in my GitHub. I'll send you guys a link so we can put it in the show notes, but I actually have instructions for all of this. So I have what I'm going to show you guys to create the step templates. I have the instructions here. And then to create the account, exactly what we just went over, I have the instructions written up here as well. Nothing fancy, just something for the viewers to be able to go through. So I have those and I'll send you guys the Git repo. That's all public. So, oops, sorry about that. So now we are at the point where what resource are we going to create? We have authentication from Octopus to Azure. We're good to go. So in our case, what I did was I just threw together some code to create a new resource group. Simple, straightforward, and we can see it in action. So we're going to go back to Octopus. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to our projects. And we're going to go to Skylines Project 3. And then at this point is where we can start setting up our steps. So once we go to process, we see add step here. And think about this like when you're creating tasks in Azure DevOps for your pipeline, same thing. So we're going to go to add step. And then at this point, we're going to see a few different step templates for Windows Server, Atlassian, any type of built-in steps, certs, Docker, Java, Kubernetes, Terraform, but the one that we want obviously is Azure. So we're going to click on Azure. And then at this point, we have two options. We can either do installed step templates or community contributed step templates. Now this is really cool because if we go to the Octopus library, and this is actually something that I learned about fairly recently, these are all step templates like tasks, right? Tasks in Azure DevOps. These are all step templates that are community driven, created by the community, for the community, open source, and for obviously Octopus to use and inside of Octopus. So this is actually really cool. If anybody's keen to contribute, they absolutely can. This is, one of the really cool integrations that we have. So with us though, to just run that code, we can simply run an Azure script. So I'm going to go here and I'm just going to keep the name as a default, run an Azure script. I'm going to run it on our worker. Now, a deployment target or a worker, it's really going to depend on what type of environment you're deploying to. So for example, you know how you have agents in Azure DevOps and you can either use Windows-based agents or on-prem? Same thing for the workers. So you can either use the Octopus worker or you can have agents that are running on-prem as your worker nodes. And then the deployment target, again, it's really going to depend. So for us, because we're deploying to the cloud, we don't have a target. But let's say we were deploying to a Windows server. Well, that would be our deployment target at that point. So the one thing that we want to focus on is the account. So we're going to choose any 4 accounts. We'll do this one because we just created it. And then we have 2 options to either script file inside of a package or inline source code. Because I have my code here, I'm going to go back and I'm going to copy that again. I'm going to paste it in here. So our code is very simple. Resource group name that we want to create, the location that we want it in, aka the region, AZ group create. It's going to pass in that name and that location, and boom, that's it. And then with that, we can click the save button. So at this point, we officially have that first step. It's good to go. And then we can create our release to actually deploy that step. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click create release. I'm going to click save here. And then it's going to load up, and we're going to be able to deploy to dev or deploy to any environment that we want to. So we'll do that deployment to dev, click deploy here, and then this is going to start to deploy our environment. And then once this is done, we'll be able to go to our resource groups and see that in action. So while that's running, do you guys have any questions?
Yeah, I've just got one about this.
Oh,
Yeah, it's a really cool product. So you're deploying it to dev at the moment. Is that something you've already created inside
Yep.
Octopus Deploy? Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
So essentially what's going to happen is, let me just go to my settings here, variables, process. What am I looking for? Oh, there we go. Sorry. So I'm looking for my default channel. And then at this point, this is going to be my default lifecycle. And then my environment, the thing that we were talking about between like dev, UAT, prod, that's going to be what's, in that lifecycle.
Yeah, cool.
So if we go to, where is it? Lifecycles here. We can see that default lifecycle, which we deployed to, and then it has that one step for dev.
Cool.
So by default, whenever you spin up like Octopus Deploy or anything, you're always going to have that default lifecycle, and then you're always going to have that default space, aka projects like in Azure DevOps. So you're always going to have that there. Yeah. Okay, let's go to our projects. Right, so we can see that this is still kicking off here. What else? Any other questions?
In your script, I noticed it was kind of passing in a variable for location.
Mhm.
Can you set it up as a variable in Octopus Deploy and pass that in?
Yep, absolutely. Yep.
Yep.
So
kind of East US is just kind of like a default value, is that right?
exactly, yeah. So what you can do is actually in the project itself, you can go to variables and then you can type in that variable here. So let's say we wanted to do like location, East US, and then let's say I saved this and I went back to the process, right? Now the really cool thing about Octopus is that this actually will not change. So when you pass in variables, like in Azure DevOps, you got to do the bracket or $sign bracket. Yeah, it's exactly like in PowerShell. You just do $sign variable. Yeah, that's literally it. Yep. So you could rip this out and then you could pass in the variable like that as well. Yep.
Can you pass in secrets as well?
Yep. So let me. Our deployment finished, but we'll go see that in a second. So let's say you wanted to pass in something else, test, right? And then down here you go to change type, and then you could do sensitive. So, and then as you can see, you can't see it anymore. Versus on this one, you could see it. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So with that, let's go back here, and then type in Skylines. And boom, we can see our newly created resource group, and our deployment was successful. We go back here, discard changes, go to overview. We can see that that has been successful. Yep.
Nice.
That's
Cool.
the demo.
Yeah, very cool. What's the one thing I wanted to ask you about was runbooks. What's runbooks?
Yeah, so runbooks, everybody loves runbooks.
So I keep seeing people talking about runbooks. So
yeah, it's pretty cool. I really love it. So essentially what runbooks are is to automate your infrastructure deployments. Okay. That's really what it comes down to. Obviously there's a ton of features in it, but that like 25,000 foot view is automate your infrastructure deployments. Okay.
So I noticed there was options to deploy to like AWS and all the other clouds, but can I use this on-prem as well for like the hybrid environments?
Oh yeah, absolutely, 100%. So if I go back here, we'll go to process and we'll click on add step. So at this point, that's where those deployment targets are going to come into play. But we didn't choose one because we were going to Azure. But those deployment targets will be wherever you're pointing to on-prem. So for example, like you could go to Windows Server, and then you have a few options here to deploy to IIS, deploy Windows servers, import certs, and stuff like that. So yeah, you can absolutely do that. Another thing that you can do too is just simply deploy a package, and wherever you want to deploy it to whatever deployment target.
Yeah, we're using Octopus Deploy at work just now, and I really like the fact you can store packages in the library and things like that. It's really
yeah, it's awesome. Another really cool thing too, and I think it's actually fairly new, is there's a feed provider for GitHub. So let's say like you want to just completely not even worry about the CI process. You don't want to, well, not worry about the CI process, but not worry about the artifact and the binaries and where to store them. What you can do is you can connect right to GitHub and pull your code right from there. So you don't even have to worry about like the libraries and the packages and the binaries and things like that. It'll just literally pull right from there, and you run your code as is. So.
One of the things I really like about Octopus, I used Octopus many versions ago, and I haven't used it for a while until this project. The template library that you showed from the community, that was always brilliant. I think that's really cool. The fact that people can write packages to do things like, I don't know, set up a certificate in IIS and then make it open source is just really powerful.
It's really cool.
Yeah, that stuff's really cool.
And the other thing too is like even interacting with the API is super, super easy. Let me just give you guys.
I've actually been using the API for quite a lot. Yeah, the CLI stuff is really, really good.
Yeah, no, it's super straightforward. I mean, like I created this little PowerShell wrapper, and like for example, I mean that this is it. Like this is all my headers look like. Like you don't have to worry about converting things for like base64 or anything like that. Like there's nothing. Like it's very, very straightforward. It's a very, very easy API to work with. Definitely probably like one of the easiest ones I've ever worked with, to be honest. And it obviously shows in the code. It's very, very straightforward.
Yeah, we were using the CLI, and it's the same. You can get access to everything really quickly. It's really, really good stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. I love that they implemented the CLI as well, because like we're seeing that more and more. I mean, like even with Azure, it kind of feels like you're seeing more and more content around doing things in the Azure CLI versus like doing things in PowerShell, for example. And because it's just very easy and straightforward to use a CLI, so we're all very used to that, and that's why it's awesome that we obviously have the Octopus Deploy CLI now.
Yeah, it's definitely, I can see IT pros being able to use this so much easier. You don't have to have a dev background to be able to do this, so that's awesome.
And that's really the thing too. And I think this is like a big message that's pushed out, and I definitely agree with it, is that a lot of CI/CD platforms, they'll be like, for your developers. And in my opinion, if you're writing code, even if it's like automation code, you're considered a developer at this point, the way the tech space is going. But if you don't consider yourself a developer and you still consider yourself that IT operations, like pure either on-prem or just in the cloud managing systems, Octopus is very like, okay, come on, we'll help you guys out too. And that's really where like runbooks and stuff came from. So they don't just say, they don't just say, here's like for the developers. It's like, here's for the developers and here's for the operations folks. We got everybody covered and under control here.
I think what I'm seeing in our current project is we have over 100 projects that need deployed. Mm-hmm. So to be able to go into a dashboard and see the version of each package that gets deployed to each different environment is one of the best things going.
Yeah, no, absolutely, 100%. And that's really like one of the things that I really enjoy about the UI as well. I'm personally not like a huge UI person in general. I'm always either writing code or working with the CLI or working with some API. But this UI I really like. And the reason why is because, if you look in other products, you have releases and you have pipelines, and it's just kind of all like jibber jabbered together. Like it's just, you got to like search through stuff or search or whatever. But here it's like, it's very straightforward. Like here's your project group, here's your project. Here it's laid out. That's it. You don't have to worry about scrolling or searching or anything like that. It's all laid out for you.
So we mentioned Azure DevOps quite a lot. Why would I choose Octopus Deploy over Azure DevOps apart from the GUI looking a lot nicer?
Yeah, it's a funny question, because you would assume that my answer would be like, nope, you got to use Octopus Deploy. No, that's not the case at all. So one, it's really going to depend on your integration based on what your environment currently looks like. So for example, let's say you have hundreds and hundreds of pipelines currently, right, in Azure DevOps, and you're trying to think of some big projects that you need to do this year or the following year or something like that. Making the switch, unless you're making it for a specific purpose, like config as code or like runbooks, may not be the best switch for you. However, on the flip side, if you are looking to make the switch, or you're looking to bring in that new CI/CD pipeline or CD pipeline or project or a template or whatever you're calling it, it goes back to like what I said earlier, where we are solely focused on the deployment aspect. So one of the things I will tell you is like, listen, we can't handle the CI for you. So if you want to build your packages or do your CI in Azure DevOps, in Team City, anywhere, great, do it. You know, we're all about like bringing different products together. It's not all about just, you know, just use our product or just use our software or anything like that. It's really just about like what makes your life easier. Does Octopus make your life easier? Yeah, cool. No? Okay, no problem. We understand, but let us know why. You know, I think the biggest thing for me, and also like one of the reasons why I wanted to take the job and wanted to be an advocate for the product and for other products is the fact that, you know, it's very focused on something. It's very focused on deployments and delivery, and that's it, 100%. So the brain scatter isn't all over the place on different products. This is what it's focused on. The second thing, the biggest thing for me is the fact that like, it's not about just pushing a single product. It's about how do we make your lives easier? Is it with our product? No? Okay, let us know why. And that's it, type of thing. So
Makes sense.
Just before we move on to, we've got a couple of fun questions, but just before we get on to that, how can our viewers get access to Octopus Deploy? Is there a free version? And if so, what comes with the free version? Is that kind of, what's the limit?
Absolutely. So I'm going to literally show you guys this right now. Octopus Deploy. So as soon as you go to the website, you're going to see that you can download the server version or you can sign up for cloud. Now, the really cool thing about it is both of those are free. So let's say you wanted to download the server version, you want to manage your own deployment, the infrastructure itself, you can download it and you can install it on Windows. Installing on Linux is coming. You can also host it on Windows and Linux containers, Docker containers, if you wanted to do that. The other thing is this, where you see the sign up button here is for cloud-based instances. And it spins up really quick, like maybe 2 to 5 seconds of that, and your cloud instance is up and running. And then as you can see down here, Octopus Server and Cloud are free for small teams deploying to 10 deployment targets or less. So remember those deployment targets we were talking about, those servers, stuff like that. Let's say you got 10 servers, that's your cap for the free version. Yeah. But on the flip side, like if you just want to jump in and get to know the product and play around with it, like you absolutely can. There's nothing really holding you back. Even if you're like, oh man, I really don't want to spin up a new server or a VM and put it on the product, sign up for the cloud one for free. It's there too. The only thing that you need is a username, password, email address, and that's it. And then you're good to go, and you literally have a cloud instance spun up for you.
Nice, that's cool. So on to the fun questions now. So I hear you're doing a new podcast called Head in the Clouds, if I'm right? Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so I think that this was actually something that was on my 2021 goals. I make goals for myself for 3 years in advance. Obviously, those are always changing. But the one thing that I had on there was a podcast. I wanted to write a podcast, do a podcast. And it ended up just being me and 2 of my buddies. Like we just talked about it a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago. And we're like, you know what, let's just do it now, right? Why not? Signed up on Libsyn. Now, you know, every time we record, it pushes everything out to Apple and Spotify and everything for us. So, you know, really the idea behind it, in my opinion, was I wanted a conversational piece of a podcast. You know, so I'll listen to like a lot of podcasts or even like just a lot of like demos and stuff that happen. And the thing that I find is that it's very like this, and that. Like it's very professional, very like boom, 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 boom. But people really enjoy like the conversational piece, just like a few friends just getting together and talking shop. And that's really what the podcast is about. We're just getting together. We're just talking about cool stuff. We got a lot of cool guests coming on. Mike Pfeiffer's coming on. Adam Bertram's coming on. Nigel Poulton's coming on. The big Kubernetes and Docker guy. Yeah, so we got a lot of really cool people coming on. We're booked through November, so it's going to be a really, really cool show. We're going to have a lot of cool conversations on there. Yeah, and that's really been the primary focus is just that conversational piece.
That's good. Well, okay, last question for you is, what's your favourite part of being in the kind of community at large? What's the best part of being in?
best part for me is when I first got into tech, I felt that I would ask questions like on forums and stuff. And this was like when I was in school, and like I would read about a virtual machine, and then I would go to try to like create one in VMware Play or something. And I would just be like, what's happening? I don't know what's going on in my brain. It hurts. And then like, I feel like I would go on and I would ask questions. And like, I wouldn't get like good responses back or like nice responses back. Like people were just mean about it, or like they would just make you feel stupid or something, or it's like, just do this, idiot, type of thing. And so for me, when I got to a certain point in my engineering career where I was like, I feel comfortable starting to give back, for me, it was, let me answer like all these questions, but in a way that's actually going to help you. So that's why like everybody that reaches out to me on LinkedIn, everybody that reaches out to me on Twitter, I try to respond like at least that day, if not that day, the very next day. And I'm not just going to like give you a one-word answer. Like I'm going to be like, here's some code, here's a video, here's something that I've done, here's something that I haven't done, but I thought this was really cool and it helped me too. So the biggest thing about the community aspect for me is that being able to give back, because unfortunately when I was getting into tech, I didn't get that same respect. So I want to give that to people.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I definitely remember them days.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's different now. I think it's very different now, just because like we're just so much more connected at this point, like with Twitter, with LinkedIn. And the thing is like, if you're not a nice person, people know about it, and they're gonna catch on. Like you're gonna get blasted on Twitter or wherever. So it's very much easier to get like blasted at this point. So I think that's why we're starting to see like those people are like kind of hiding behind their keyboards and not really talking anymore. So yeah, times change.
Cool. So that's all we got time for today. So thanks for coming on and talking to us about Octopus Deploy.
Yeah.
I've learned a hell of a lot, and Gregor, I think, has learned some new things as well. Yep. He's a bit of an expert by the sounds of it, which is cool. So yeah, thanks very much, and yeah, hope everyone enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Take care.
Cheers.